which I know we could go into if we think about the types of jobs. In terms of some of the health effects, so I think that minority communities are being hit several ways. One is being less educated; they have lower skilled jobs. Or a disproportionate share of lower skilled jobs, which means that they're going to be less likely to be able to work at home. And I know that Heidi, along with Elise Gould, have a report about the percentage of people who can work from home. It's about 1/5 of Blacks and 1/6 of Hispanics compared to 1/3 overall. So that means that individuals with those jobs are either laid off because they can't work from home and the industry shuts down, or they are still performing their jobs, but they are having much higher exposure rates. And I think that's leading to some of the disproportionate contraction rates that we're seeing. And that is going to be a big concern. I'll go ahead and stop there. We can continue. I have a note about Puerto Rico, but we'll tie that in.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to geographic disparities. And I do want to say, while I dunked a little bit on economists and the way the frameworks they use to think about the current situation, I have seen a lot of really thoughtful analysis. And there have always been parts of the profession that were very, like Marie and all of you have thought a lot about this. I can remember one time at the Federal Reserve, we had a labor markets disparities conference. Like the Fed was really trying to wrap its head around how the labor market wasn't the same for everybody. And I remember Sandy Darity at one point, like after one of my colleagues had presented, very careful data, like looking at exactly these kind of like labor force participation, unemployment by race. And Sandy Darity's like, you all have got to say the word discrimination. Like, and this is just, a lot of economists have, and not like full out like structural discrimination, racism, and that like, we just haven't, like, you don't hear the word racism used at the Fed to talk about the data, and frankly in a lot of the economics profession, because it's a hard reality to wrap one's head around, and yet millions of people live that reality. So like, just, you can't, like, we shouldn't ignore it. Now I have, like, to pivot to a more positive, like I have seen a lot of really careful research, and I've seen it coming from more and more institutions and think tanks. So one example I was really impressed with was the JP Morgan Chase Institute. They've for a while now been looking at spending data among their customers, but really trying to frame it in the economy as a whole. And last week they put out a report that was very specifically about racial differences in what we see in terms of the impact on spending. And they have very timely data. So I think there is more of a conversation. I mean, it's absolutely essential. We should have been having it for a long time, but this is a very thin silver lining to the current events. So I guess, Heidi, one thing, before we get to you about the, like, what can we do about all this? Your EPI has been putting out an incredible amount of very thoughtful research. I thought if you would just want to elevate and like give us a highlight on a report that you really think, or some kind of analysis or discussion at your work that speaks to this issue, I think that would be great.
Yeah, can I say one thing? I don't want to forget this, because there's one thing that sort of ties together what Martha was talking about and the discussion about race, and something you said earlier, Claudia, about the thing that we know, that in good times and bad, the Black unemployment rate tends to be about twice as high as the white unemployment rate. So if you look at what projections for unemployment are, it starts to blow your mind, because a CBO put out projections last week on where they think we're going economically, and for the third quarter the estimate is that the unemployment rate will average 16%. So what that means, if you take historic relationship between the overall unemployment rate and white unemployment and Black unemployment, that means, I just did this really fast, that means the white unemployment rate would be 14.4%, and the Black unemployment rate would be 28.8%. Those are the kinds of numbers we are looking at there. It's huge overall, but the disparities just amplify at a time like this.